Am I the a-hole for putting my foot down and charging rent when my stepdad started trying to tell me what to do in my own house? My stepdad, 55 male, has been married to my mom, 52 female, for about 5 years. They were doing all right but hit hard times and eventually had their house foreclosed on. So they moved in with me, 27 female. They've been living here for about 2 or 3 months now and it's been going okay until last week or so. Also, my stepdad has been working a part-time job but has not had full-time employment since then. Anyway, I feel like some of the issues started since I've been on vacation, which I have for 2 weeks. Sometime during the first few days, he saw me heading out and made some sort of comment regarding my outfit. He said the shorts were too short and that I should reconsider. We fought about it back and forth until I just decided to leave because I was tired of reasoning with him. He's been making a lot of these comments at various times and in different ways, like your skirt or shorts are too short, your belly is showing, etc. I've told him to stop, and he says okay, but then he starts up again. I can't say I understand why. I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when I had my boyfriend over. I've told my mom about it as well, and she said that she doesn't support it, but that this is a dispute he and I need to solve. My boyfriend stayed until maybe 10:30 to 11 p.m. and then left. My stepdad didn't say anything while he was here, but he emotionally imploded after he left. He said that it's wrong to have guys over that late and to be in my room with them alone. He said that we don't stand for these things in our house. I responded that he can stand for whatever he wants in his house, maybe even in a hypothetical our house, but he can't tell me what to do in my house. I told him that the days of him making unsolicited comments at me need to end. On top of that, I told him that from here on out, I'm charging $400 a month in rent with a month-to-month agreement. Additionally, if he continues to make comments, this agreement is over and he'll be out of the house as soon as I can make it happen. My mom was upset at first, but I was able to calm her down. First, I reminded her that she told me it was up to us to solve this dispute, and this is how I've decided to solve it. Secondly, I told her that since they've been staying for a while, charging rent would make my life a bit easier for as long as he stays. She was a bit more amenable to that second point. My stepdad is just overall quite pissy. He hasn't told my mom or me his thoughts on the arrangement since he yelled at me about it the night of our big argument, but he is just generally ignoring me when he can. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I think your boyfriend needs to come over a lot more. I think you need to assert your dominance over your home each and every day. If they get too comfortable, they won't be incentivized to get their own place. That's actually a good idea. Maybe he should move in, because if the threat of eviction doesn't stop him, maybe seeing my boyfriend will haha. Boyfriend hasn't been over since the incident, but he hasn't made any comments on my clothes at all, so maybe he's improving. Or maybe he just doesn't want to get evicted, who knows. Boyfriend movie night at least twice a week. Friends over for game night once a week, dance party night, etc. Enjoy your house. Now, where to find the friends to make this happen? I do feel like stepdad is making progress towards leaving on his own, but damn, it's slow progress. He hasn't made any comments since, and my mom says he's planning to pay the first rent soon, so I think I'm good for now. Sounds like you found a good solution. Not the a-hole. I was initially thinking of evicting them as soon as possible, but I figured that given he's been chill for months, I didn't need to go nuclear right away. My idea with charging the rent is that to an extent it's a punishment, but also a sort of hint that it's my house. Rent doubles every time he gets into your business. This is funny. I think I'll likely just evict if it continues to be a problem though. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing custody to my baby daddy after 3 years? We were together for 6 years. 3 years ago, when our child was just 3, he left us to get back with his first family. They were never married, but they had already been separated for 5 years before we met. I never met his first partner, only their kids, who seemed nice, at least when they needed something. He used to borrow money from me all the time, always claiming it was for his kids' school expenses or other urgent needs. I helped because I wanted to support him as a father. Later, I found out he had been teaching his kids to act polite with me, so he could ask for money more easily. I read their conversations on Messenger, where they talked negatively about me behind my back. I never confronted him. I just took note of what kind of person he really was. When he left, I moved on and raised our child alone. No financial support, no visits, nothing. Now, after 3 years of complete absence, he suddenly wants custody. Why? Because his first family left him again. According to a mutual friend, he couldn't provide for them, and on top of that, he's been seeing another woman. So now that he has no one, he thinks he can just claim the child he abandoned? Absolutely not. He had every chance to be a father, and he chose not to be. Custody isn't a backup plan for when your other options fail. Some people are telling me I should give him a chance because he's still the father. But where was that father when our child needed him? Nowhere. Am I the a-hole for refusing? Because to me, there is no choice. Not the a-hole. Be sure to document the entire timeline of this, with copies of all conversations for court. But this will go nowhere without him paying the 3 years of child support he owes. Custody isn't a second chance after failing his first family. Document everything, especially his absence and lack of financial support. He doesn't get to waltz back in now that he's alone. He wants custody so he can go after you for child support. Don't give him a chance. He is not still the father. He never was. That's my feeling too. He wants child support. It has to be about money. If he just suddenly wanted to be involved in the child's life, he would be asking for visitation. The fact that he's wanting custody is definitely all about money. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not saving my mother's child from foster care? When I, 24 male, was 16, my dad died in an accident. A week later, my mother moved another guy in and told me she was pregnant. Within 5 months of moving him in, she was married to this guy and had a daughter with him. I quietly moved out days before my 18th birthday and went no contact with my mother, her husband, and their kid. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles all had relationships with them and me, but separately. They asked me once or twice if I'd ever be open to reconciling, and I said no. I went no contact with one of my aunts 2 years ago when she invited me over to her place for lunch and then sprung the fact that she had my mother's other kid there. My aunt said she wanted to give me a chance to have a relationship away from my mother, and I told her I didn't want one. She said it didn't include my mother, and I told her it didn't matter. The kid wasn't someone I wanted a relationship with. I said we might be related, but I didn't care about her. I told my aunt she should have known that, and instead tried to force me, so I was done. She told me it wasn't right to pass up the chance. I said the kid wouldn't want to be around someone who feels like they shouldn't exist, and that's how I feel. Last November, my mother and her husband died, and their daughter went to my grandparents for a couple of weeks. Then she went to a couple of other relatives, but none wanted to keep her and raise her. This is when they wanted me to step up. I said no a million times and warned I'd go no contact with them if they didn't accept my answer. They ended up placing her in foster care and had the caseworker reach out to see if I'd be willing to become her guardian. I explained that I wasn't, and I turned down the chance for contact between us. I said I wanted none. I didn't want any updates, and I didn't want my details shared with her or her future foster or adoptive parents. My mother's family didn't expect me to stand firm on my decision, and they questioned me for weeks before I followed through and went no contact. I was asked how I could live with myself if I didn't feel guilty, and whether I was worried about throwing away the chance for a relationship one day. I was honest with them. I didn't care. I didn't want a relationship. They asked if I'd be okay with her being abused in foster care. I said it wasn't something I'd feel guilty about, and told them that if they were so bothered, they should take her back and leave me alone. It was quiet for a few weeks after I blocked them everywhere. But then a cousin saw me on a night out with some friends and brought it up, and I had to leave because they refused to let it go. My cousin tried so hard to guilt-trip me. The whole family has, really. But I don't feel guilty. I could have taken the kid. I have a second bedroom in my small place. I don't make great money, but I could have made it work. I just don't want to, and the things I said to my aunt before, they're still how I feel. Am I the a-hole for this? I'm curious what unbiased parties will say. Edit to add, for clarification, my mother had an affair while my dad was alive, and they were still married and together when my dad died. She was already pregnant then too, and the affair partner was the father. Not the a-hole. You're not responsible for a child you never wanted a relationship with. Your family had the chance to step up and didn't. Expecting you to isn't fair. You set boundaries, and they ignored them. Don't let guilt tripping change your decision. That's what I can't understand. None of them could pull together to raise her if that was such a priority for them. But they expected me to, knowing how I felt? I am so uniquely qualified to answer this. Part of my job is tracking down potential guardians for kids in care. It's not unusual at all for half-siblings to decline being involved. Often there's trauma they haven't processed, and it's unfair for anyone to expect you to jump in and raise another traumatized kid. The social worker will focus on the other family members as permanency options, then explore options in communities such as adoption. Don't feel guilty. They know this kid. They are involved with this kid. They can figure out how to support her moving forward. And it's cruel to both of you to plunk a traumatized kid into the home of someone who doesn't want them and has no connection to them. What are you supposed to do when she wants to talk about missing her mom? How awful would that be for both of you? Any family who brings it up should be asked why they don't take her. If they already know her and love her, they are a better choice anyhow. Do not feel guilty. This is not your burden to carry. Not the a-hole. Your mother betrayed your father and you by having an affair and getting pregnant while still married. Then she moved the affair partner in 1 week after your dad died? Absolutely disgusting behavior. You don't owe this child anything. Blood relation doesn't equal obligation. Your family trying to guilt trip you is manipulative as heck. They all refuse to step up themselves, but expect you to sacrifice your life? Your mental health matters too. Taking in someone you resent would be harmful for both of you. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to acknowledge my half-sibling? I, 22 female, have a half-sister, 6 female from my dad's affair. I want absolutely nothing to do with her, my stepmother, or my dad. My mother was battling cancer when my dad decided to cheat. Instead of being there for his wife while she was literally fighting for her life, he was off playing house with another woman. That left me to pick up his slack, driving my mom to appointments, managing her meds, cooking, cleaning, and basically taking care of everything he should have been doing. I was 16. Meanwhile, my dad got another woman pregnant and then expected me to be a loving big sister to the result. I've made it clear since day one that I want no relationship with my dad's child, my stepmother, or my father, beyond what is absolutely necessary. I barely speak to my dad unless I have to, and I haven't spoken a word to my stepmother in years. As for my half-sibling, I do not acknowledge her existence. I don't talk to her. I don't babysit. I don't entertain her attempts to interact with me. If she comes up to me, I tell her to leave me alone and go back to whatever I was doing. I'm not mean to her, don't yell or insult her, but I refuse to engage. I treat her like a stranger's child. My father and stepmother hate this. They've spent years trying to force a relationship. They push my half-sibling toward me constantly, telling her she has a big sister who loves her but is just a little confused. I don't love her. That family is everything. If that were true, he wouldn't have cheated. That her big sister wants to be in her life? I don't. They try to shove her in my face every holiday, every visit. I've told them straight up, I don't care. She is nothing to me. She's just a kid I don't know, and I don't want to be around. The more they push, the more I dig my heels in. For contrast, I have an older brother, 27 male, and I am a very involved aunt to his kids. I love them to pieces, take them to family-friendly activities, and babysit them for free regularly when my brother and sister-in-law need a break. My father's side calls me a hypocrite for this, but I don't care. My nephew and niece are a family. My father's kid is not. My brother has cut my father's side off completely and has said he'll support me if I do the same. It's clear to everyone that once my grandparents pass, they're the only reason I still have some minimal contact. I'm cutting my father off for good. He'll be just a bad memory, and I feel nothing about it. No money, no guilt trip will ever be worth talking to the man who destroyed my teenage years by making me essentially take on the role of my mom's spouse for 4 years, when I should have been allowed to just be a kid. My stepmother recently confronted me saying I'm cruel and that it's not my half-sibling's fault how she was conceived, that she's an innocent child who just wants a sister. My father backed her up, calling me heartless. Other relatives have chimed in, saying I should be the bigger person, that I'm holding on to too much hate, and that I'm punishing a child for my father's sins. But I don't want to be the bigger person. I don't want anything to do with my father's new family, and I don't care if that makes me a B. But I want to know if I'm an a-hole for this, if only because I want to have an outside perspective with no skin in the game. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. The problem isn't with OP who has a right to her feelings. The problem is with the parents who are setting the child up to be rejected. They are trying to manipulate her to be the bad guy by sending the kid the innocent one just like OP. And they need to knock it off. They're damaging that one too. Idiots. If you don't want anything to do with them, then why do you still see them? My dad and his wife often drop by my grandparents' house with no announcement, and I still want to go to family parties and reunions with my grandparents. And he'll be there when I do. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not sharing the story behind why I grew up in foster care with my wife's family? I, 28 male, went into foster care when I was 5 and stayed in foster care until I turned 18. I don't share the story with people often because it's the start of a lot of deep-rooted trauma that I've spent 8 years working through. The people who know are my 2 closest friends and my wife, 27 female. Oh, and my therapist. But I don't fully count my therapist because I told them for the purpose of healing, not to be upfront with the closest people in my life. My wife's family, both immediate and extended, are close. She has 2 living parents who've been married for 40 years, and she's the second youngest of 6. She has sisters and brothers-in-law, nieces and nephews. Her aunts, uncles, and cousins are regularly part of get-togethers, and I know them all pretty well, but I have never shared the truth with them. They're curious, and I've been asked questions about my past. I answer them with a public version, as I call it, that I went into the system at 5, never had contact with my biological family again, and that I feel it's for the best. They've also asked questions about finding them again and why I don't reach out. A part of why I never tell the full story is that one of my more immediate relatives was a child themselves when I was placed in the system, or a younger teen to be more specific. I know there will be questions about why I don't try to get in touch with them. Plus, I feel like it will lead to encouragement to search for people I've never met, and I'm simply not interested. My wife agrees that her family would probably push for it and wouldn't be able to understand my refusal, and she supports my decision to say nothing. But some of her family are unhappy about being kept in the dark. It's come up a few times, and my wife shuts it down, telling them it's not something they need to know. But I know the conflict will increase over time because of this, and I feel bad about it, especially since I get along well with everyone outside of this issue. So tell me, am I the a-hole or not? Not the a-hole. They need to mind their own business. Why you grew up the way you did, and the trauma around it, is none of their concern. Why are they so hung up on figuring it out? I think there's a mix of curiosity and wanting to play the hero. In my experience, that's why people push so much anyway. They want to be the ones to help me reunite with people. I had a social worker like that for a few months. It was hell. Help you reunite people you have no interest in reuniting with? They sound real fun. They should use their savior complex elsewhere. That social worker was taken off my case for that reason. Reached out to the formerly minor relative when I was a teenager and tried to push reunification. Their feelings hadn't changed about me, and it was fun hearing about that. Not the a-hole. Damn. People really do like to be in other people's business, don't they? You do not owe them an explanation or your life story. Please keep asserting those boundaries. They do. A small part of me gets being curious, but I can't imagine pushing like some of them have.